quick disclaimer before we jump into the video. I'm about to talk about DEI and my experience with it and my approach to it, etc. when I was managing a team at a tech company. It's a big, complicated subject. I'm coming at this from an assumption of positive intent, which I'll talk about it a little bit in the video. There are people who would like to dismantle DEI programs that are genuinely concerned about their functionality and the effect that they're having on businesses, community, and organizations, etc. There are also a subset of people who are not making honest arguments. They may be wanting to dismantle DEI programs for other reasons, cost savings, racist reasons. I can't read people's minds, and I'm assuming in making this video positive intentions from everyone that I am working with and talking to. I'm not going to get into or address possibly dishonest reasons or nefarious reasons people might have for dismantling government programs or DEI programs. That's not what this video is about. There's other channels, there's other places. It's the internet. There's a ton of places that you can go. You can talk about that and indulge in that perspective if you'd like. That's not what I'm doing here on this channel. This channel is largely about positive intent and fostering good communication and just genuinely people trying to understand complex subjects by talking to each other and having good faith discussions. With that said, if that's not your thing, just skip it. Go watch a different video. There's been a lot of talk in at least American politics of late about DEI. I'm sure it's been all over the news. The Trump administration's been making cuts. And as part of this being present in the media, I attended a Braver Angels debate a couple weeks ago. I'll put a link down to both Braver Angels and the specific debate video for anyone who wants to look at it in the video description below. And something struck me. Well, first, what is Braver Angels? So you have the context of what on earth I was doing what this debate was about. Braver Angels is an organization that I participate in that their goal is to decrease the vitriol in communications in America at the moment. So left, right, blue, red, etc. It's really about creating an environment where we can discuss and actually talk to each other without the vitriol, without the various things that tend to come up. They actually go do workshops and teach people how to have conversations with people. And their debates are structured in a way that it's about trying to find what the other person is talking about and truly understand the other side rather than win. We're not trying to win a debate. It's not like debate in school or something like that. It's about sharing your perspective and trying to learn the other person's perspective so we can come to a better understanding. It's really about bridging that divide. I absolutely love Braver Angels. It's one of the few organizations that I donate to. So I went to this DEI debate, and something struck me out of that debate and made me want to do this video just to at least share my perspective on it. What I learned from that is that assuming positive intent from people that you're talking to is really important, and we can get into that a bit later, I hope. But we lack the language, or at least we're not using the language to discuss it in a productive way. We need a framework and we need agreed upon language to talk about this, because what I found is that everyone pretty much agreed on the goal. Lots of disagreement on what DEI is. Their experiences with it were different, and it's just too big and complicated of a topic to talk about without applying some concepts and some framework to it so that we can at least agree on what we're arguing about and what we're discussing. So I wanted to make this video and break it down from my perspective. That's the perspective of a tech manager. I was a team manager at a tech company for quite a while, built a team, hired a team, managed a team, and had DEI training. And there's parts to it that there's a few perspectives. I'm going to do a little bit of a reset, and I said in my last video that I'm not going to edit these, so you're going to hear me stumble through it when I screw up and need to go backwards. There's two parts to the argument that I can see for DEI. One is it a good thing or a bad thing? And then is it implemented in a good or a bad way? I see two reasons for DEI programs. One of them is a justice-oriented, that the perspective and the argument that there have been marginalized communities, at least in this culture and probably all cultures, that have been put at a disadvantage. Slavery is a common one. Minorities. There's various systemic things that have put some communities in a that have put some communities at a disadvantage, and there's an attempt from a justice perspective to make up for that and to bring things back to a level playing field. That's one, as far as the fairness of it. That's a valid perspective. That's not what I'm going to talk about this time. That's whole different ethical debate that we're not going to get into. I'm going into this on the assumption that DEI is a positive thing, or the conclusion that it's a positive thing, simply because a DEI program, if executed correctly, will give you multiple perspectives. And those multiple perspectives are inherently valuable when problem solving on a team, like my team would have to do when I was managing a team. That's why the perspective that I'm coming to this is important, is that when I was interviewing and hiring people to be part of my team, I wasn't looking for I wasn't looking to build a diverse team because it was the fair thing to do. I was quite selfishly looking to build a diverse team because it was best for my team and it was best for the company that I was working for. And so we're going to get into that a little bit. I want to talk about why it's inherently positive in that respect, or from my perspective. So we'll talk about this a little bit. Why is having a diverse team, why is it good? Let's say that you are working on a problem and you've got a team of people and they see that problem from their perspective. Then quite simply, so if you have people with a large history, left to my own devices, I probably would have hired a bunch of bald, white, bearded men who play Dungeons and Dragons to work on the team. And that was there were more of us than not on the team that fit that description. And that was that's a difficulty in hiring in tech, is that the talent pool tends to look pretty similar. They tend to have a similar background. They tend to have a similar experience. And that leads to a team that tends to get along really well because they know each other's subculture. We can speak in memes to each other. You can make a Dungeons and Dragons reference or a gaming reference and everybody gets it. But it also limits the team. As you can see in this graphic that I'm showing, everybody's looking at a problem from a similar perspective, which means that their approaches to solving that problem are going to be similar. But what if you were to have, let me open up this other image. What if you had this perspective and you had someone on your team who could just look at it in a different way? That's going to open up possibilities of either engaging with customers or engaging with the problems in the product development that's different, that you may not have thought of just because you don't have that background. I see things from the perspective of my experience, my culture, my history, etc. And I want a diverse team because I don't want a bunch of people who think like me. I want people who think different from me. Not better, but different, so they can look at problems from a different angle. And in this graphic that I'm showing, great, it's a box. But if that was like a customer problem, I worked in customer support, so that's the type of thing I would work on. And a box doesn't really mean a whole lot, but what if we did something that looked more like a realistic problem, like this image? That's more like a real world problem that you would need to be solving in business or in government or any sort of team where DEI would come into play. And this is complicated, but what if you look at it from the side, from that other perspective, like this, that other team member that has a different background? That's a completely different problem. They see it literally from a different angle, and there's different facets that they can tackle and that they can approach that are real and valid that you just may not have noticed. So that's my 2-minute conversation about why DEI is valid and an important thing to try and work on. But let's talk more about what exactly DEI is. Let me open up this framework. First off, the thing I noticed in that debate is, what is DEI? I've been talking about it for 7 minutes or so at this point, but I haven't actually said what it is. It's DEI. That's a big, broad topic. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is simply having multiple perspectives. Equity is what we talked about at the beginning of addressing disparities between groups. And inclusion is, from my perspective, making that team work as one, and bringing all those different perspectives together. And I think that let's look at this graphic that I brought up. How you can't just do all of this at once. There's no single DEI program that just does DEI. It's actually a very complicated thing. In my experience working in tech, I break it down into 3 sections. And first off, there's the talent pool. I need people that I can hire I want people who have the skill set that I need to work on my team, that they can contribute to the business. I'm not going to hire someone just to fill a spot. I need someone who can contribute, and there's some base skills, whether that's working on, in my case, it's customer communication skills, problem-solving skills, troubleshooting skills, as well as a variety of different things that I'm looking for. But that pool tends to be quite limited. There's for every different set or every business that you're looking at, there's going to be a limited set of talent for that pool, and it can be quite homogenous. There can be very similar people. If you're looking for people who have a law degree, that's going to be a subset of people, and so the question would be, how do you get people into the law practice that have a diverse background that you can pull from? In this case, building that talent pool could be things like programs with education, expanding STEM in the STEM programs in elementary school to get a broader number of people interested in math and sciences, etc. Just some example. The way I've broken this down in this flowchart here is you've got the talent pool, and then there's that set of programs, a subset of programs below it. Education programs to teach things, just representation of showing people in that field, showing people who aren't bearded white men with glasses in the tech world, may make people more interested in it or realize that that's part of them too, that they have that possibility. And then community outreach. When I wanted to hire more women for my team, because I only had one, I went out to women's spaces and talked to them and to try and bring them in, at least to reach out to that community and make that help build up that talent pool. Editing just in here, keeping in the spirit of imperfection, and that is part of an honest dialogue. I'm not always going to make the most amount of sense, or things might be unclear. I'm not going to go back and edit or remove any of the stuff that I just said, but I did want to add some additional context specifically around I only had one woman on the team, so I wanted to add more. It's not so much, while it's good to have a diverse number of perspectives, and I do want to have as many different perspectives that I can on a team, culturally, gender experiences, etc. There is the larger perspective, I've been saying perspective way too much in this video, and it's just rolling off the tongue all the time now. The concern is, wait, I've only got one woman on a team of like 10. Why? Is there something in my process, in the talent acquisition process and the hiring process, the way the job posting is put? Was there something in here that's selecting women out of the process to the point where I don't even see them, or when I'm interviewing them, am I giving them a fair shake? What's going on in this? And try and get to the understanding of why. That approach is, I think, called outlier management, of looking at the metric and then seeking to explain it, rather than having a predetermined metric that you want to make sure you hit. And that was the spirit of it. And the community that I talked about reaching out to was reaching out to the women in tech communities, meetup groups, etc., in the areas that I was hiring for. I hope that adds some context and makes a bit of sense, and we'll go ahead and get you back to the video. That kind of leads into the second one. If you've got the pool, how you acquire the talent, how do you advertise advertise the position, how do you interview for people? That's going to have a certain set of, like, one of my favorite things when I first started hiring was to just chat with people and get to know them, and that's a heavy bias towards people who naturally get along with me, which isn't a requirement for the job. If you just blindly go into your talent acquisition process, your interviewings, all of those things without making any sort of adjustment, you're going to just lean towards hiring people that you would expect to hire. And there's going to be some gems out there that you don't expect to hire. They're going to bring in different perspectives, like we talked about, and help build up the team. So you're going to have a whole subset of possible programs under talent acquisition where you're going to want to maybe do some blind hiring practices. I'd have to find the reference. If I can, I'll find it and put it in the notes. If you know it, throw it in the comments. There was a reference that I saw for hiring for symphonies where there was a bias against female musicians. So to address that, they had people audition playing music behind a screen so that the people hiring didn't have a chance to evaluate whether the person was a male or female. And they actually had to go so far, if I remember right, to change the sound of the floor or have them not wear shoes, because you could tell the sound of heels on the stage as opposed to not heel shoes, and that would lead potentially to bias. There's a lot of strategies around that with blind hiring practices for taking names off of applications to remove that type of awareness and really focus on the candidate. But that also goes into the interview strategies like I talked about. How do you ask questions? There's other programs. This is just a couple of examples to fill it up. I could break into, how do you advertise it? How do you write the description? Do you write the description in language of people who are currently in the field? So you want someone who has been working on this, which means you're going to be probably hiring people who have already been in the field. So that's going to be people who already fit the criteria and may not be having as much of a diverse background. For example, one of the best techs I ever worked with, his job right before that was working as like a butcher at Safeway. He had all of the skills necessary, but didn't really have the background. So how you go out and find that talent can broaden your applicant pool and give you additional perspectives that help everything run smoother and make a better team. And a big one is a big strategy that's pretty common is interview calibration. So if I have my personal biases, but I've got another person on the team another manager who's doing the hiring, they're going to have different biases. So you can calibrate and have all of them get together after the interviews and talk about it. And I can say, well, I just had a feeling I didn't really like this person. It was more of a vibe thing, and that's a red flag. That's, well, why? Maybe they did too, and we can talk about it and get to the bottom of it. But just having multiple voices in the interviewing process that are all aware of this and going through it can get you much better results and get you some people that you didn't think about. So there's talent pool. How do you build that pool of talent that you're working with? There's talent acquisition. How do you make sure you're bringing them on and you're not applying a lot of biases during the hiring process? And then there's actually having a diverse team, because it's much easier to manage a team of people who think like me. If I'm working with a bunch of techs that all have similar interests and have a similar style, similar cultural backgrounds, it's usually a lot less friction. So you have to, if you bring in different people, you're more likely to have differences of opinions, arguments, maybe misunderstandings. So you need a subset of tools or programs to address that. And this is where what I would refer to as the inclusion. Team building, making sure people get along. There's a variety of programs that you can do to utilize the best of that talent. Communicate with them well. For example, if I had it's a simple one, but if I had someone on my team who was blind, I wouldn't give them the same type of instruction material that I would a sighted person. It's important to communicate with everyone on your team in an appropriate way. Just awareness of the differences, making it an inclusive place. And of course, that's where sexual harassment, discrimination, hardcore HR type policies come into play. They're trying to build the environment where everybody can get along and everybody works well together. And that's just it's honestly a harder thing to manage as a manager than it is a team of people who all think like I do. But I think it's worth it. It gets you that diverse team. And then the last thing to talk about is assuming positive intent. That's where a lot of misunderstandings come in, and just assuming that your teammate is trying to do the right thing and they're trying to get to the goal, and then help them get there and come to an understanding, rather than just thinking for X reason they're shirking or they're not getting their work done for a specific reason, or they're lazy, or whatever other biases might come in. This is a tiny 15 minute video. I don't know how long it's going to be by the time I stop talking to break this down. The key thing is, when we say DEI, that's a whole bunch of stuff. This is a more complicated topic than I can address in this video, with even talking about my personal experience of working with hiring and managing a tech team. What if it's for a school environment? What if it is for public services or government or military, or a volunteer group that you're working with, or just getting the parents together at a Cub Scout meeting or something like that? Each of these groups and ways in which you're trying to apply DEI is distinctly different. And even in one group, it's a very complicated thing that's got multiple layers, multiple aspects to it, lots of different programs, lots of different approaches. And that's a fair and helpful conversation to have of, is this program working? One of the things that came up quite a bit in the Braver Angels debate is the concept of quotas. Are quotas, that quotas are fundamentally unfair, that they're racist, that they're horrible, but most of the people who liked DEI and weren't arguing against it did not think of quotas when they thought of DEI. But that's a common thing. What is a quota? Are quotas effective? If my goal is to have a workforce that is 50% female, for example, then maybe I measure my applicant pool and look at, am I getting 50-50 on my applicants? Am I getting 50% men, 50% female who are applying for the job? Look at the company. Is it 50-50? Plus or minus something for a variable. But the problem is, and maybe that's not a quota where you're explicitly told, I want to hit this number. It is still a number that's being measured. And if it's missed, then I as a manager need to talk about why. I need to look at, is my recruitment process different? Is my interview process, what's up? Why did we make the decisions? And it's kind of a revisiting, which it's a healthy thing to do anyway. And that's why I have in that outline a feedback loop of, it's a continuous ongoing process. But that's also more work. If you're measuring it, it's going to be easy, and you're actually going to be creating a bias in the manager that's hiring or the teams that are hiring to hit the quotas or the goal breakdown and diversity breakdown, because if they don't, that's more work for them. So maybe there aren't quotas that explicitly say you must have this number of minorities working in your company. it's still, if you're measuring it, you're creating a bias towards hitting that goal that can feel like a quota, or it can act like a quota to the people that are doing it if you're not managing those teams right. And if the managers are overworked and they don't have the time to put into that, maybe they're doing a lot of other stuff. So it's inherently a complicated thing, and quotas were the thing that came up in the debate the most. So let's talk about quotas. We can get rid of quotas or debate the programs that use quotas without throwing out all of DEI. And what we've done is we've simplified this incredibly complicated topic into a single phrase of DEI, when there's actually nearly infinite number of moving parts, programs, concerns that are all flowing under it in all these different programs. And if we don't have an honest conversation about what we're talking about, have curiosity about the programs in question that we're curious about, that we have concerns with, it's just going to turn into people yelling at each other, and it's not really effective, and we're going to do more damage than good. So to sum up, it's a complicated process. We really need to agree on a framework and on the language, and realize that there's a difference between the goal of DEI and the implementation of DEI, and that implementation is going to vary from company to company, and from government agency to government agency, and from school district to school district even. One school district could have a DEI program with the same name as another school district, and they could be implemented completely different ways. So this is going to take work. It's going to take some faith. It's going to take some good intention and some willingness to get it wrong. Nothing is going to be perfect. There's always going to be individual managers, individual programs that don't necessarily succeed, or maybe have some dishonest intentions from time to time. Things are going to go wrong. It's never going to be perfect, but do we want to throw out the entire concept just because of some things that are not working? No, we fix what's working. It's a lot easier to fix something usually than throw it out and start from scratch. And I do think that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a valuable set of goals, and it can have some positive effect on the individuals and on the teams that are applying it. That's my thoughts. If you're going to comment on this video, I like that. Please do keep it civil. On this channel, civilized and honest discourse is the requirement, and I'm not going to be real happy with comments that come in raging and flaming, etc. So hopefully it goes well. I hope this was helpful. If you've got questions, hit me up in the comments and I'll try and answer them. If there's subjects that you would like to see me tackle in the future, throw that in the comments as well. I'd love to take a look at that. I've got a list of things that I want to go through, and we'll see how it goes. Hope everybody's having a great week.